The last generation Samsung Galaxy S5 was an amazing device, so good in fact that NCIX Anthony even bought one for himself. But the biggest problem many users had was the build quality. It just didn't feel like a premium flagship should. However, Samsung listened to its users and the new Galaxy S6 definitely feels worthy of being a flagship device. They removed a few vital Galaxy features, but after using it for a bit, we're starting to see why. Let's go over some of the initial specs. We'll be focusing on the plain old S6, but we should have a review of the S6 Edge up in a month or sometime. We're still waiting for our sample. Fingers crossed. The new S6 weighs just 138 grams, which is actually less than the S5. It features the same 5.1-inch size display, but the resolution has been bumped up to a Quad HD display with pixel density of 577 pixels per inch. It should fit easily in most pockets without bending or looking like you're just a little bit too excited to see someone. The front looks pretty much the same except for a slightly larger home button that can now read your fingerprint with a tap instead of an old tedious swipe. At the top, you'll find an upgraded 5-megapixel camera that now supports auto HDR. The back is where Samsung's new premium design really shows. It's made of Gorilla Glass and will be available in white, black, green, blue, and gold. It has a built-in wireless charging receiver which is capable of supporting both Qi and PMA standards. It's fast too, with a claimed charging rate of up to 1.4 amps wirelessly. Now, we don't have their fast wireless charger to test with, but Anthony did notice that it was very easy to align the phone on regular Qi chargers. The glass is very smooth, so make sure your charger has a rubber surface or it will slide off. The heartbeat sensor has now been relocated to the side of the new Sony camera sensor, which now features a bright f1.9 aperture lens and optical image stabilization. Sensitivity is better as well, with less noise in low light situations and just as good image quality in bright light. For those worried about the protruding lens, it's now surrounded by metal instead of just shiny plastic, although if you ask me, I still would buy a case for it, as I wouldn't want to put it face down or back down, or even though it's Gorilla Glass, but anyways. That's what I do. Speaking of metal, the entire phone is now slimmer and narrower than before. Most importantly, it feels stronger. It's surrounded by a very sturdy aluminum frame and gives the iPhone 6 and HTC One a run for their money. Continuing with the user feedback, Samsung has now lowered the power button on the side to a more comfortable height and separated the two volume keys on the left so you can differentiate them more easily. Now, this is a feature I really like, as the S5 had the volume and the power buttons around the same height, so when I went to go turn off the phone, it wouldn't do it because I end up pressing the volume rocker, whereas on the S6 I can do that with ease and not worry about touching the volume. Now, the headphone jack has been moved to the bottom and the speaker now faces out on the bottom instead of on the back, so you don't have to awkwardly cup it this way in order to hear it. Now, Samsung claims the S6 is now 1.5 times louder than the previous model, so we took some measurements with our own sound meter. Now, with both screens facing the user, we hit a peak of 70.5 decibels on the old S5 and 75.9 decibels on the new S6. With an increase of 5.4 decibels, it's actually pretty darn close to being 1.5 times louder. Thank you for putting the speaker on the bottom. Now, next time, speakers on the front? Maybe two of them? Please? Inside, the S6 is now powered by a 64-bit Exynos 7420 processor, which is an octa-core processor with 4 high-speed cores for performance and 4 low-speed cores for efficiency and battery life. There is 3 gigs of RAM, and your storage options are now limited to 32, 64, and 128 gigs. Yes, it's true, and we're sad that there's no more micro SD card slot, but we see why Samsung did this. They did some research and found out that most consumers just use around 23 gigabytes of storage on average. We know this sucks for power users like me and Anthony, who both have 64 gig cards in their phones, but the upgrade from 32 to 64 and then 64 to 128 gigs will be roughly $110 per device. Samsung includes 65 gigs of Microsoft OneDrive cloud storage with every phone, so that should alleviate some storage issues. Next up on the chopping block is the removable battery. The internal battery is now 2550 mAh, down from the 2800 mAh in the S5. After a full 8-hour day of tweeting, snapping photos, sending emails, and Chromecasting videos, we're left with around 20% battery life. Yes, it's not removable anymore, but to be honest, I haven't seen someone swap out their battery for a fresh one in the last few years unless they were using a BlackBerry. True story. People usually reach for a power bank or charger long before a spare battery. Some users may be worried about the longevity of their device and not being able to refresh the battery after a few years, but most people nowadays, to be honest, upgrade their phone before their battery degrades significantly. Now, it's clear Samsung put a lot of thought into this model and tried very hard to offer what the customers want. As sad as we are to see a missing SD card slot and removable battery, Anthony and I both think it's definitely worth the slimmer body and much better premium materials and overall usability improvements from the S5. Even TouchWiz, something I absolutely hate, has been further debloated with it offering the same number of features as before, but with most of them turned off by default. You'll still find things like eye tracking, screen sharing, S-Health, My Magazine, and gesture control, all of which operate with less lag than before. Even the multitask lag that many users complain about on the S5 is now greatly reduced. Overall, the Galaxy S6 feels like a proper successor to the S5 and not just another rushed 6-month refresh. Let us know in the comments down below, what do you think of the S6's changes and if you prefer the S6 Edge instead? Alright, that's it for this episode of Unpacked. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this from NCIX. We'll see you later.